the rest of the session is actually going to be a live demo. So for those of you that are on a device that you can kind of manage the call and a web browser open at the same time, the web address is freemathapp.org, and I can put that in the chat. And then I'm going to get out of here. Okay. All right. So the free math website starts out with just the main experience is these demos that show, and then there's actually some of those videos that were included in the presentation. There's a quick video to show the webcam thing, but mostly this content that is introducing stuff was kind of covered in the presentation. So we can jump right in and start seeing what a student would see. So one thing that's different about free math from a lot of the other services is that students can actually start with just a blank free math document, and you don't have to set up an activity ahead of time. And so they can treat this like a blank notebook that's just like a digital notebook, and you can assign them problems however you want to assign them. So when they go to the website and they click on that student tutorial, they'll be shown this video. It's 2.5 minutes long. It shows them everything they need to know about how to edit the documents. And it also explains to them that the work will be collected by submitting a file to their LMS. And so from there, there's these couple of directions that can kind of orient them to the experience. It tells them that work can save to their downloads folder. And we also have direct integration to Google Drive and Google Classroom. So these buttons up here also allow them to save directly into the Google ecosystem. Then for them to learn that workflow that was covered in the presentation a little bit, they can read the text, click this expression, then press enter. And then edit this line to show part of your work, press enter again. And then they just learn that the core experience is around editing these expressions, simplifying they kind of are totally flexible in what they can do inside of this editor experience. And they can work all the way down to a final answer. And then it gives them instructions to scroll to the top of the page, click the blue button labeled problem image demo, and learn about adding images. And then here, it just lets them know that they can grab a notebook or worksheet, click the button that says snap a picture up here, and then they can take a picture of work on paper using their webcam or device camera. The website does also work on mobile phones, and so you can access it from a mobile device. I might take a second to pause. I've been talking for a little bit. Does anyone want to unmute to ask about a type of problem we want to try to run through together as we try to learn about the student experience? Yes, Justin? Oh, one moment.
Sorry, it was my fault. I was trying to get out of full screen and unmute myself. My bad. So I love this website, and I am not a math teacher, but I do love this website in the sense that you have all these different ways that people can express themselves in giving feedback. So my question is regarding, have you felt like your feedback has changed or gotten since we've been in distance learning? And then my other question is, have you started thinking about how you would adjust some of your grades to reflect, to not only penalize, reduce the idea of penalizing kids for things, but also making it more of an accurate reflection of what their where their progress is at? Because like you said before, there were some students who are stressed, I have my students tell me B stands for bad, right? And then I have the other students who are getting a D or an F, not in my class, but for example, maybe in their math or their PE class are getting a D or an F. not a big motivator for them to continue to sign in. So if you could maybe speak to some of that with some of those practices and what you've done to help address that situation of the kids who are struggling, especially, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So in that case, I might actually jump into the teacher grading demo because the video that was in the presentation was really short to just kind of do the high level. So the main thing, I guess, that I would say for kind of addressing those higher level concerns, I'm mostly trying to close the loop between when the students do the work and when they'll get feedback. I do believe that the EdTech products that leaned too heavily towards automating everything, and there has been kind of like a reaction to that. Like a whole bunch of the tools that are now more popular aren't all about automatic grading, it's about giving visibility to teachers. But I think there are still some ways that it can be optimized further. And the way that this is structured, it's supposed to give like the students the autonomy to say, I can produce this document full of work and it's not linked to a class. So if they, like in theory, had a problem to solve in math, like this is a tool that they can use without having to have an activity set up for them. It's like a very free form experience. And like eventually I like the idea of trying to grow this into something that is a platform that even like a mathematician might reach for to record their work, as like this becomes a dominant platform that is like the Microsoft Word for math, because that seems to be just a giant hole that never got filled, even though Word's now like 30 years old. And so trying to tie that back to your question, I think that the main thing I'm doing to try to build confidence is to just have a tighter feedback loop between the students and the teachers. And a few different things in the grading experience I can kind of emphasize about how that gets accomplished. So up here at the top, you can see that there's this graph, and what it's showing here is actually the distribution of answers once the software has grouped them by the similar final answers. So this bar chart actually isn't sorted by problem number, and that is intentional because it's sorting by the questions that had the greatest diversity of answers. So it's actually sorting by the smallest, largest answer group. So over here on problem 11, all of the students got the same answer all in one group. And the assumption is generally that most of the time that that happens, you probably had all the students get the right answer. It's possible that they all walked away from the lecture with the same misunderstanding, but it's going to be rarer. And so generally, when you're going to be grading an assignment, it's probably going to have more than 3 problems. And so part of the reason why it's arranged like this is to allow you to only grade a subset of the assignment, but still gain insight from the fact that the assignment was done and give you kind of a guided experience through what your students did yesterday. So by default, every question gets a full credit completion score. And so you're not required to go through and grade everything for them to get confirmation that like they get credit for having done something. And so whenever you are limited on time, you can refer to this chart to say, well, I can probably start on the left, and those are likely the questions that are the most important to review. And so it's kind of a more intelligent version of that workaround that I was talking about before of grading a random selection of problems to reduce your burden, but it's kind of guided by this light touch technology analytics, but it's very light touch analytics. I don't know what the right answers are, so you don't have to end up producing a highly structured document to say what the right answers are, and I don't have a way to enforce like, this is the correct mutation of the correct answer that can be still considered correct, even though you submitted it differently. There are definitely some teachers and students that complain about anything that does automatic grading can be too picky about the type of answers that's submitted. So trying to avoid some of those problems, I came up with this model of the teachers really should drive deciding what point values are, how partial credit is assigned, but the dominant activity that's important in grading is getting targeted feedback to students, and then teachers doing this introspection activity about like, how do I improve my communication going forward, like in the context of a specific class, where I'm seeing these specific errors and misconceptions.
Okay, I hear it now. So I have a question.
Mhm.
Does this is it an app? No, you don't call it an app, right? This is called. I grew up many years ago. My math was paper and pencil only, and we sat in rows and columns. So all this is all new for me. Does this have a glossary in, or sometimes I just need to hear something said differently for me to understand it? And a glossary, I go to a math book that has a glossary to look up a definition and say, oh, okay, that's what that means. Sometimes when English is mixed in with abstract math symbols, you have to really slow down what you're reading so you know exactly what's being, what you're seeing there in front of you. So I just wonder does this have a glossary index, or is that nothing? You wouldn't need that. You wouldn't need that in this. This is a grading thing.
Yeah, so
Right? This is grading only, not really a math app. I'm sorry, I'm kind of
well,
slow.
no, it's okay. One thing that we are trying to kind of wrestle with a bit as we fill out more features in the website, currently it's you bring all of your own content. And so we don't provide you with any materials, but it's designed to be like really flexible. But it's so flexible that you actually don't even need to put anything into the system to make an assignment. Your assignment definition actually can be as simple as telling your students to do a textbook assignment on page 350, do problems 1 to 10. And if they know how to get to free math, they can just start recording their work. And so it can be like,
I have a math problem. Can you put this in and see what it says? How
sure.
would you don't mind helping with my homework, do you?
Yeah, we can walk through something, sure.
Okay, sorry. I'm sorry. Does anybody have any objections to me taking up time here? No. Okay.
We'll see how long it takes. I think it's useful to like go through the student experience, like solving a problem.
Here's the question. I don't know if, oh no, you can't see it. So we're taking the absolute value of 13x plus 12, and that expression is divided by x minus 14. So 3x, yeah, the 13x, yeah, right, there you go. And that is equal to x minus 14. And that's equal to 15.
Okay.
The absolute value is the entire expression on the left.
Got it. So it's all this is inside of the.
Yeah. So we have two solutions for x, hopefully, because it's an absolute value.
Yep. And so then this goes out of here.
Is this too hard to do? Like do a math problem real quick?
You know what? The intention is that it is supposed to be easy for them to like produce the math work. So let's go for it.
Okay. Oh, so then, but the answer, I mean, the solution is something I have to figure out, right?
Yes. So one thing about free math is like it doesn't know the right answers, and it's not something that solves math problems for you. It's just a place for you to record your work.
Oh, okay. So we don't want to do this now. It's embarrassing.
It doesn't have to be embarrassing, but I think that's a helpful thing to clarify because it's actually on my FAQ page because a lot of people like come to the website and they're a little bit confused because it's not structured like a lot of other services. Like some of them do try to embed like, I'll solve your problems for you. And that's not how it's structured. And it has so little for teachers to do when they like assign out the homework. They're like, but what do I do to assign the homework? And I'm like, you just tell the students like, this is the problems you need. So that can be, I give a PDF. So it might actually be helpful if I like walk through creating an assignment in Google Classroom rather than me just talking. So to demonstrate that, there's just this split experience between what students can do and teachers. And then on the teacher side, watching the chat a little bit. Okay, so on the teacher side, there's a button for creating a new classroom assignment. So I already have my Google account signed in. You can select a class, and then the title can just be like Chapter 3, Section 4. And then you can literally just say, in your textbook on page 410, do 1 through 10. And then it'll say it created a draft assignment in Google Classroom. You can go there to attach a due date and any needed files. So then if I jump over, I think this was Classroom right here, in my test classroom, and my most recently created one is right here. You can edit this assignment. So right now, I could create this assignment simply by just saying due date is Wednesday and hitting assign. Like they have instructions about the problems they need to solve. Free Math automatically adds a link to the website when you create it through the Free Math application. And this should be all the information your students need to get started. So that's generally less than you need to do in most of the platforms because they kind of have a whole bunch of structure they want you to set up so they know how to organize things. But really the only way that Free Math needs to know how to organize things is that the students type in the problem numbers. So because there's that flexibility, there's less busy work that you do every day to like set it up. It is also possible though, if you don't want to do something like this, you can provide a file to your students to use as like a template for their assignment. So if I go back to the website, I can create a document and say, I have a problem number 1, a problem number 2, 3 problems, and then just, I'm not going to write real math problems, but if I wanted to, I probably want to have instructions. So I'd like simplify the expression. And there is kind of a nicer way to present this as text. Oh, there's a little bit of a math. So there's a few things you can actually embed text within the math. You just have to like explicitly call it out that you're going to do it. And then it will look nice. I can just get rid of this stuff. So then what you can do, you can create a little template for what your students will be editing, and you could save this into your drive. Of course, I called it untitled assignment. I should probably fix that. Homework template. You can save that into Drive. And then from there, a little clock. Okay. My Zoom stuff is hiding my tabs, but I have to find a place for all this. Okay. Okay, sorry. So now if I wanted to, I could assign it just with this description from the textbook, but you can also add a file. And that file can be a Free Math document. So if I go to my recent files and I grab my homework template that I just created, I can say, make a copy for each student, and that will give them an editable file that they can open up in Free Math. So now if I say assign, now that's sent out to my students. I have 2 students in this test class. Unfortunately, the Zoom on Windows doesn't appear to let you share your whole screen. So I do have to, I think, change the screen share quick to just go to my other browser window that had the student login. But screen share, this one, share. Okay, sorry. So now I'm logged into Google Classroom, but now I am my test student, Jack Hill. So in this case, I can go to my classwork and I can see this assignment that we just created. It's still pink because I have something I need to do on it. And when you do create an assignment in this setup where you provide a file ahead of time, students can open their Free Math files directly from the Google Classroom interface. So it's available up here on this menu. Generally, it should be the first one, but there's these extra things. I'm sure you guys are familiar because you guys use all the cool apps attached to Google. But then you can use this as a student to directly open that template document that you attach to the assignment. And so from here, the student can just go through, show their work. They can do the snap a picture thing. And it's possible this isn't going to work because my camera is currently attached to the Zoom. But anyway, it does work. You just can't have two things using the camera at the same time. But it is also possible if they wanted to do something graphical, they could go to Desmos, launch the graphing calculator, and type an expression. And then up here on the sharing options, they could just say, I want to export this as an image and copy it. And then it says use Control-V to paste. And you can paste something directly from Desmos to have graphical things. And you also have the option to like choose a file, and you can upload something as well. But there's the paste thing because a lot of things do let you put it in the clipboard too. Then from there, it does automatically save your stuff into Drive. So that actually is now updated in Drive. But when I'm done, I can click Submit to Classroom. And then in that case, I just need to tell it which assignment I want to submit. And it'll confirm that I want to turn it in. And then it'll report that it turned it in. I can go check as my student. It's actually auto refreshes in just a second. Or maybe Google's gonna be a minute. Okay, I'll just refresh. So now it is submitted. So then on the other half of the Google integration, I can, unfortunately, have to do my sharing thing. I'll check the chat really quick. So for the question that was asked about integrating with other LMSs, I guess one thing I'll say, because the group is so small, you can feel free to unmute yourself if you want to ask a question, because I'm not doing the best at following the chat.
How many characters can you put in a problem? Like, can it be so big that, oh no, there's no room to put this problem in there? I'm just curious. Like, what did you set your parameters for this size of a problem?
Right now, there's no limit to like number of steps. And Google seems to be pretty comfortable saving documents that have a good number of images in them.
I might want to send a rocket to Mars. I might need a lot of steps, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know.
Yeah, so sorry, on the question that was asked in chat about other LMSs. So there are the buttons in the interface for directly creating a Google Classroom assignment, but all of the things that I said about kind of like the fact that it's like almost like too flexible, all of that applies to other LMSs kind of too, where all you need to do is have your students have the URL to the website and kind of get them past this hurdle that they produce their own document starting from nothing if you don't provide them one. And then they can create their files. And if they don't have a Google account, the save option in the interface will save to their device, and it just saves into their downloads folder. So then from there, they can upload it into any LMS that you have. And we have instructions linked on our Getting Started page for how you can download files in bulk from a bunch of different LMSs.
Sorry.
Yep.
I'm sorry. I'm like, if I don't say my question, I'll forget. Do you have, how does the rubric, do you have to type in the rubrics or can they be downloaded? I noticed you had a rubric section.
So there actually isn't a rubric. So in the grading experience, it just shows you the work grouped by similar final answer, but the website actually doesn't claim to know all of math. And so it's only using a pretty like basic algorithm to be like, do these two expressions look similar? It'll do a little bit of algebra to say that fractions are equal to decimals and things like that. But mostly it's just doing the grouping, and you have to make your own determination of, is it full credit, partial credit? Do I want to send it back to the student with just some highlights to tell them where to look at it? You can give specific feedback to tell them like kind of correcting their mistake, or you can omit correcting their mistake and you can just give them like a more open-ended, you should go review this step.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I can. I
So
can
Jason, I have a question before you
Yep.
go. So the last thing they see is what's graded. Like on what you're sharing is 15. Like that's the final answer that it will grade.
Actually, in this case, because I added an image after the 15, it's actually going to consider this image the last step. But generally, whatever is on the last step is what will control that grouping.
And so when I see it, will it have, like when I see the student's work, what will I see as the teacher?
Yep. Probably could have organized this a little bit better. Sorry about that. So if I go back here and I jump back into teacher grading, so there's a demo teacher grading button also on the homepage. And another video, this is about 4 minutes long. So what you'll see is this. So when they submit an image, you'll see the image. It does request when they upload an image, there's a little bit of text after it. The screen's a little bit constrained with all the Zoom stuff. It asks them to type their final answer. At least so far, I'm not analyzing the images.
Oh.
It's not pulling the expression out of it. It's something that we could add possibly in the future, but there's some fallibility in actually reading like handwritten math. So it's a bit of a hard problem, and you generally would kind of need like students would have to check that the computer read it right anyway. But that's currently how it does the grouping.
So it'll see like, so for this one, it says like negative 19C minus 23D. It would look for other things. Like if there was like a negative 19C plus 23D, they would group that into a second thing. And maybe someone just started typing like random numbers that would group in a separate category.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Okay.
here it kind of gives you a little heading for this group, and it says that this is the thing that was similar. So in this case, this is actually the right answer. So we can go through and just kind of run through some grading. So I can just click on the full points button, and I can apply that to everyone in this group. And right now I force you to scroll past everything so that you confirm that there's enough work shown by each student to justify reaching that answer. But if there's a big group, you scroll a little bit, but that means you're looking at their work.
So like that. So if you see like, if someone just puts in the final answer, it also separates that.
So in that case, it does end up in the same group, but I do sort within one of these groups by least work first. So actually, if I jump over to the second demo, problem number 1, in this case, it sorted it. Okay. So the students that showed as little as possible, you see those first. So people might have different philosophies. Someone might give a kid a 0 if they did this. Other people might give them partial credit because maybe they actually did their process, but they were too lazy to type it. And then once you've graded one of these, you can still give full points to the rest of them by saying full points. But there's a special button that says apply to ungraded that won't overwrite what you just did over here. I'll check the chat again. It seems like there's a little activity. I'm getting.
And you also said that the text or the math print that Desmos uses and that free math uses it's an open source thing on the internet.
Yep, absolutely. We're consuming the exact same code written by a benevolent other developer that's not hired by Desmos or Khan Academy.
That's very cool. That's very cool.
And I guess one thing I might highlight, because that really does cover the bulk of the grading stuff. In the student side, while the core math editor is the same as what you'd find in Desmos, you'll find more symbols here than what you'll find even inside of Desmos activities. And I think what they're trying to do is create a more like constrained environment where students from like more like elementary and like middle school are not like intimidated by the keyboard. And it's something that we're still trying to make a final decision about. Right now, it exposes to all of the students all of these symbols, but they do have to go into these different categories to find them. But part of the reason why we include all these symbols is free math also isn't designed to be a calculator. So especially inside of the graphing calculator portion of Desmos, they only show you symbols that they know how to graph. So they're not going to show you like exists in a set or therefore for writing a proof because it's not graphable. But this is really designed to be something where you can just, anything that you can think about, you can write. I guess early in the presentation, I also was like, one thing that's bad about the computer is you have to learn an incantation to produce the symbols. So there is a math keyboard to just find the math symbols visually. But as you become more of like a power user, you can mouse over each of the buttons and it'll give you a keyboard shortcut to produce that. My thing's gonna give the little, it'll give you a keyboard shortcut for each of the symbols.
So this basically makes it like an easy form of LaTeX. So you don't have to learn the syntax of LaTeX. It's just more user-friendly print.
Yep. I think I'm pretty close to being out of time. Were there any other questions hanging around? All right. I actually, I don't think, Lisa, that the room necessarily closes right away. I hung around in one of the sessions for a decent amount, like after it finished. If people want, I can kind of continue to show a few things. One thing that I was kind of on the path to when we had questions was, I'm still the student, so I'm gonna switch back to the teacher quick. And on the grading side, we did pick Google because it's really popular. So the grading experience is easiest if you're using Google. So now if I want to grade the assignment that that student had just submitted, I just click grade, I pick a class and an assignment. There's a little permissions thing that you have to do where for me to read the files that your student submitted from a third-party application, you have to pick them out of the Google Drive picker. So there's just this little explanation that I have to show you back all the files and you have to select them all to give me permission to edit all of them at the same time. And I tried to edit down that text, but I just couldn't make it too short and have everything I needed. But anyway, you select all the documents and then I can open them. And in this case, only one student had submitted. So that thing also does clarify that you do have the limitation to only grade submitted things for now. So if I go to my work for problem number 1, we can see the 2 steps that were typed, and then there's an image. And when students do submit an image, you do have the flexibility to write on it to give feedback. A little smiley face. There's also a little text editing thing. And then you can save that. So you can mark up on images and you can highlight on these individual steps. And then once you've highlighted something, you could say like, check here in referring to that highlight. And then you provide a score like we were showing before. So then when you're in the Google workflow, you just say save to classroom. And that'll save back all of the documents for all of the students. And it also saves a draft grade with their fully calculated grade. If you do want to have a more high-level overview that's not showing all of this detail, there is a grades view. And it's actually a little boring because I only have one student with 3 problems in it. But this would show you like the matrix that you would typically find in a grade book. But here it's just problems versus students.